Chapter 22. But there was a rugged, practical side to the character of Roger Gale, and the next morning he was ashamed of the brooding thoughts which had come in the night. He shook them off as morbid, and resolutely set himself to what lay close before him. There was work to be done on Bruce's affairs, and the work was a decided relief. Madge Deering, in the meantime, had offered to go with Edith and the children to the mountains and see them all well settled there. And a little talk he had with Madge relieved his mind still further. What a recovery she had made from the tragedy of years ago! How alert and wide awake she seemed! If Edith could only grow like that! Soon after their departure, one night when he was dining alone, he had a curious consciousness of the mingled presence of Edith and of Judith, his wife. And this feeling grew so strong that several times he looked about in a startled, questioning manner. All at once his eye was caught by an old mahogany sideboard. It was Edith's. It had been her mother's. Edith, when she married, had wanted something from her old home. Well, now it was back in the family. The rest of Edith's furniture, he learned from Deborah that night, had been stored in the top of the house. Most of it, she told him, Edith will probably want to use in fitting up the children's rooms. With a twinge of foreboding, Roger felt the approaching change in his home. "When do you plan to be married?" he asked. "About the end of August. We couldn't very well till then, without hurting poor Edith a little, you see. You know how she feels about such things." "Yes, I guess you're right," he agreed. How everything centered round Edith, he thought. To pay the debts which Bruce had left would take all Roger had on hand, and from this, time on his expenses with 5 growing children here would be a fast increasing drain. He would have to be careful and husband his strength, a thing he had always hated to do. In the next few weeks he worked hard in his office. He cut down his smoking, stayed home every evening, and went to bed at 10 o'clock. He tried to shut Deborah out of his mind. As for Laura, he barely gave her a thought. She dropped in one evening to bid him good-bye, for this summer again she was going abroad. She and her husband, she told him, were to motor through the Balkans and down into Italy. Her father gruffly answered that he hoped she would enjoy herself. It seemed infernally unfair that it should not be Deborah who was sailing the next morning. But when he felt himself growing annoyed, abruptly he put a check on himself. It was Edith he must think of now. But curiously it happened, in this narrowing of his attention, that while he shut out 2 of his daughters, a mere outsider edged closer in. Johnny Gear was a great help. He was back in Roger's office, and with the sharp wits he had gained in his 18 years of fighting for a chance to stay alive, now at Roger's elbow, John was watching like a hawk for all the little ways and means of pushing up the business. What a will the lad had to down bodily ills! What vim in the way he tackled each job! His shrewd and cheery companionship was a distraction and relief. John was so funny sometimes. "Good morning, Mr. Gale," he said as Roger came into the office one day. "Hello, Johnny. How are you?" Roger replied. "Fine, thank you." And John went on with his work of opening the morning's mail. But a few minutes later he gave a cackling little laugh. "What's so funny?" Roger asked. "Fellers," was the answer. "Fellers, human nature. Here's a letter from Shifty Sam." "Who the devil is he? A friend of yours?" "No," said John. "He's a con man. He works about as mean a graft as any you ever heard of. He reads the ads in the papers, see, of servant girls who are looking for work. He makes a specialty of cooks. Then he goes to where they live and talks of some nice family that wants a servant right away. He claims to be the butler, and he's dressed to look the part. There ain't a minute to lose, he says. If you want a chance, my girl, come quick. He says chance like a butler, see? Pack your things, he tells her, and come right along with me. So she packs and hustles off with him, Sam carrying her suitcase. He puts her on a trolley and says, "I guess I'll stay on the platform. I've got a bit of a headache and the air will do me good." So he stays out there with her suitcase, and as soon as the car gets into a crowd, Sam jumps and beats it with her clothes. "I see," said Roger dryly. "But what's he writing you about?" "Oh, it ain't me he's writing to, it's you," was John's serene reply. Roger started. "What?" he asked. "Well," said the boy in a cautious tone, vigilantly eyeing his chief, "you see, a lot of these fellers like Sam have been in the papers lately. They're being called a crime wave." "Well?" "Sam is up for trial this week, and half the Irish cooks in town are waiting round to testify, and Shifty seems to enjoy himself. His picture's in the papers, see, and he wants all the clippings, so he encloses a $5 bill." "He does, eh? Well, you write to Sam and send his money back to him." There was a little silence. "But look here," said John with keen regret. "We've had quite a lot of these letters this week." Roger wheeled and looked at him. "John," he demanded severely, "what game have you been up to here?" "No game at all," was the prompt retort. "Just getting a little business." "How?" "Well, there's a club downtown," said John, "where a lot of these petty crooks hang out. I used to deliver papers there, and I went round one night this month." "To drum up business?" "Yes, sir." Roger looked at him aghast. "John," he said in deep reproach, "do you expect this office to feed the vanity of thieves?" "Where's the vanity," John rejoined, "in being called a crime wave?" And seeing the sudden tremor of mirth which had appeared on Roger's face, "Look here, Mr. Gale," he went eagerly on, "when every paper in the town is telling these fellers where they belong, calling 'em crooks, degenerates, and preaching regular sermons right into their faces, why shouldn't we help 'em to read the stuff? How do we know it won't do 'em good? It's church to 'em, that's what it is, and business for this office. 9 of these guys have sent in their money just in the last week or so." "Look out, my boy," said Roger with slow and solemn emphasis. "If you aren't extremely careful, you'll find yourself a millionaire." "But wait a minute, Mr. Gale." "Not in this office," Roger said. "Send 'em back, every one of 'em. Understand?" "Yes, sir," was the meek reply. And with a little sigh of regret, John turned his wits to other kinds and conditions of New Yorkers who might care to see themselves in print. As they worked together day by day, Roger had occasional qualms over leaving John here in the hot town while he himself went up to the mountains. He even thought of writing to Edith that he was planning to bring John too, but no, she wouldn't like it, so he did something else instead. "John," he said one morning, "I'm going to raise your salary to $100 a month." Instantly from the lad's bright eyes there shot a look of triumph. "Thanks, Mr. Gale," was his hearty response. "And in the meantime, Johnny, I want you to take a good solid month off." "All right, sir, thank you," John replied, "but I guess it won't be quite a month. I don't feel as if I needed it." The next day at the office he appeared resplendent in a brand new suit of clothes, a summer homespun of light gray set off by a tie of flaming red. There was nothing soft about that boy. No, Johnny knew how to look out for himself. And Roger went up to the farm. Chapter 23. George met him at the station as he had done a year before, but at once Roger noticed a difference. In the short time since his father's death, certain lines had come in the boy's freckled face, and they gave him a thoughtful, resolute look. George's voice was changing. One moment it was high and boyish, again a deep and manly bass. As he kept his eyes on the horses and talked about his mother, his grandfather from time to time threw curious side glances. "Oh, yes," George was saying, "Mother's all right. She's doing fine. It was pretty bad at first, though. She wouldn't let me sit up with her any. She treated me like a regular kid. But any fellow with any sense could see how she was feeling. She'd get thinking of the accident." George stopped short and clamped his jaws. You know, my dad did a wonderful thing, he continued presently. Even when he was dying and Mother and I were there by his bed, he remembered how she'd get thinking alone, all about the accident. You see, he knew Mother pretty darned well. So he told her to remember that he was the one to blame for it. If it hadn't been for him, he said, they would have gone home in the taxi. That's a pretty good point to keep in her mind, don't you think so? He inquired. And Roger glanced affectionately into the anxious face by his side. Yes, he said, it's a mighty good point. Did you think of it? Yes, sir, George replied. I've told it to her a good many times. That and two other points I thought of. What are they, son? Asked Roger. First, said the boy awkwardly, about how good she was to him, and second, that she let him buy a new car before he died. He had such a lot of fun out of that car. On the last words, the lad's changing voice went from an impressive bass to a most undignified treble. He savagely scowled. Those 3 points, he continued in more careful, measured tones, were about all I could think of. I had to use 'em over and over, on Mother, when things got bad, I mean. A flush of embarrassment came on his face. And hold her and kiss her, he muttered. Then he whipped his horses. We've had some pretty bad times this month, he continued, loudly and manfully. You see, Mother isn't so young as she was. She's well on in her 30s. A glimmer of amusement appeared in Roger's heavy eyes. But she don't cry often any more, and with you here, we'll push her through. He shot a quick look at his grandfather. Gee, but I'm glad you're here, he said. So am I, said Roger, and with a little pressure of his hand on George's shoulder, I guess you've had about your share. Now tell me the news. How are things on the farm? With a breath of evident relief, the lad launched into the animal world, and soon he was talking eagerly. In the next few days with his daughter, Roger found that George was right. She had been through the worst of it, but she still had her reactions, her spells of emptiness, bleak despair, her moods of fierce rebellion or of sudden self-reproach for not having given Bruce more while he lived. And in such hours her father tried to comfort her with poor success. Remember, child, I'm with you, and I know how it feels, he said. I went through it all myself. When your mother died, but Mother was so much older. He looked at his daughter compassionately. How old are you? He inquired. 36. Your mother was 39, he replied. And at that, Edith turned and stared at him, bewildered, shocked, brought face to face with a new and momentous fact in her life. Mother only my age when she died? Yes, said Roger gently, only 3 years older. With a twinge of pain, he noticed 2 quite visible streaks of gray in his daughter's soft blonde hair. And she felt as you do now, as though she were just starting out. And I felt the same way, my dear. If I'm not mistaken, everyone does. You still feel young, but the new generation is already growing up, and you can feel yourself being pushed on, and it's hard. It's very hard. Clumsily, he took her hand. Don't let yourself drop out, he said. Be as your mother would have been if she had been left instead of me. Go straight on with your children. To this note he could feel her respond, and at first, as he felt what a fight she was making, Roger glorified her pluck. As he watched her with her children at table, smiling at their talk with an evident effort to enter in, and again with her baby snug in her lap while she read bedtime stories to Bob and little Tad at her side, he kept noticing the resemblance between his daughter and his wife. How close were these 2 members of his family drawing together now, one of them living, the other dead. But later, as the weeks wore on, she began to plan for her children. She planned precisely how to fit them all into the house in town. She planned the hours for their meals, for their going alone or with the nurse or the maid to their different private schools, to music lessons, to dancing school, and uptown to the park to play. She planned their fall clothes and she planned their friends, and there came to her father occasional moods of anxiety. He remembered Bruce's grim remarks about those simple schools and clothes, the kind that always cost the most, and he began to realize what Bruce's existence must have been, for scarcely ever in their talks did Edith speak of anything outside of her family. Night after night, with a tensity born of her struggle with her grief, she talked about her children, and Roger was in Bruce's place. He was the one she planned with. At moments, with a vague dismay, he glimpsed the life ahead in his home. George was hard at work each day down by the broken dam at the mill. He had an idea he could patch it up, put the old water wheel back into place, and make it run a dynamo, by which he could light the house and barn and run the machines in the dairy. In his new role as the man of the family, George was planning out his career. He was wrestling with a book entitled Our New Mother Earth and a journal called The Modern Farm, and to Roger he confided that he meant to be a farmer. He wanted to go in the autumn to the State Agricultural College. But when one day, very cautiously, Roger spoke to Edith of this, with a hard and jealous smile which quite transformed her features, she said, "Oh, I know all about that, father dear. It's just a stage he's going through, and it's the same way with Elizabeth, too, and her crazy idea of becoming a doctor. She took that from Alan Baird, and George took his from Deborah. They'll get over it soon enough." "They won't get over it," Roger cried. "Their dreams are parts of something new, something I'm quite vague about, but some of it has come to stay. You're losing all your chances, just as I did years ago. You'll never know your children." But he uttered this cry to himself alone. Outwardly he only frowned, and Edith had gone on to say, "I do hope that Deborah won't come up this summer. She's been very good and kind, of course, and if she comes, she'll be doing it entirely on my account. But I don't want her here. I want her to marry, the sooner the better, and come to her senses. Be happy, I mean, and I wish you would tell her so." Within a few days after this, Deborah wrote to her father that she was coming the next week. He said nothing to Edith about it at first. He had William saddled and went for a ride to try to determine what he should do. But it was a ticklish business, for women were queer and touchy, and once more he felt the working of those uncanny family ties. Deborah, he reflected, is coming up here because she feels it's selfish of her to stay away. If she marries at once, as she told me herself, she thinks Edith will be hurt. Edith won't be hurt, and if Deborah comes, there'll be trouble every minute she stays. But can I tell her so? Not at all. I can't say you're not wanted here. If I do, she'll be hurt. Oh, Lord, these girls. And Deborah knows very well that if she does get married this month, with Laura abroad and Edith up here and only me at the wedding, Edith will smile to herself and say, "Now isn't that just like Deborah?" As Roger slowly rode along a steep and winding mountain road, gloomily he reflected to what petty little troubles a family of women could descend so soon after death itself. And he lifted his eyes up to the hills and decided to leave this matter alone. If women would be women, let them settle their own affairs. Deborah was due to arrive on the following Friday evening. All right, let her come, he thought. She would soon see she was in the way, and then in a little affectionate talk he would suggest that she marry right off and have a decent honeymoon before the school year opened. So he dismissed it from his mind, and as he listened in the dusk to the numberless murmuring voices of living creatures large and small which rose out of the valley, and as from high above him the serenity of the mountains there towering over thousands of years stole into his spirit, Roger had a large quieting sense of something high and powerful looking down upon the earth, a sense of all humanity honeycombed with millions upon millions of small sorrows, absorbing joys and hopes and fears, and in spite of them all the great life sweeping on with no great death to check its course, no immense catastrophe, all these little troubles like mere tiny specks of foam upon the surface of the tide. Deborah's visit the following week was as he had expected. Within an hour after her coming he could feel the tension grow. Deborah herself was tense, both from the work she had left in New York, where she was soon to have 5 schools, and from the thought of her marriage only a few weeks ahead. She said nothing about it, however, until, as a sisterly duty, Edith tried to draw her out by showing an interest in her plans. But the cloud of Bruce's death was there, and Deborah shunned the topic. She tried to talk of the children instead, but Edith at once was on the defensive, vigilant for trouble, and as she unfolded her winter plans, she grew distinctly brief and curt. "If Deborah doesn't see it now, she's a fool," her father told himself. "I'll just wait a few days more, and then we'll have that little talk."